Always bet on the Chet. Oh, the Chet, the Chet.
Chet, 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 Chet.
I, like many kids who were interested in filmmaking growing up, was inspired by Clerks, the no-budget, one-location comedy film Kevin Smith directed in the early 90s. That and Reservoir Dogs showed the youth that, hey, maybe I could make a movie too. Clerks and Chasing Amy had this raw, cutting-edge feel to them. It was a Gen X guy who was doing his Gen X thing, right in the middle of 90s counterculture, trying to make a visual statement, not really caring about conventional Hollywood's rules for dialogue and script writing. To film nerds and geeks, Kevin Smith, at one point, was pretty cool.
Tell Mel to whip me up a toasted bagel with cream cheese. You want one too? Make that too and kiss my grits, nooch.
He made his 5 View Askew movies, which were all interconnected with Jay and Silent Bob as the through line, and then decided it was finally time to make a true blue studio movie. He was given $35 million and made Jersey Girl, the big Ben Affleck Liv Tyler dramedy movie that neither critics nor fans of his work really enjoyed. This sent Smith into a tizzy, and he retreated back to the comfort of his View Askew and made Clerks 2, while also swearing this would be the final View Askew film. Clerks 2 was liked well enough by his fans, but there was, of course, not enough of a pool to general audiences to see a sequel to a no-budget indie darling that came out 10 years prior. But hey, now it's in color, and there's a really nifty donkey show sequence. So after Clerks 2 flopped, Kevin said, well, maybe I'll try another broad appeal studio comedy. And by broad appeal, he meant I'll make a movie with porno in the title and make parents think it's an X-rated dirty movie that their teens should avoid at all costs. Which, it's an R-rated comedy, sure, but it's pretty tame. No worse than any other raunchy comedies at the time. Zack and Miri made an okay amount of money. It wasn't a full-on flop. And to be fair, this was the movie of his filmography that most people outside of his fanbase knew or had seen. I remember plenty of folks renting it in high school, and early 2010 streaming probably helped a lot. The problem, I think, is that because it starred Seth Rogen, Smith assumed it would do super bad and knocked up numbers, but it didn't. It was not this big giant hit Kevin was waiting and hoping for.
Oops.
So after this, he retreated once again, but instead of going back to the comfort of the View Askew universe, he decided to go balls to the wall and make an off-kilter horror film, which was unlike anything he had made before. Red State took everything you knew about Smith and threw it out the window. Gone was the stagnant generic cinematography that had been plaguing some of his films. The dialogue was more raw than ever before, and there were interesting ideas mixed with scenes of good subversion, making the watcher truly not know where the film was headed. The heart of this was Michael Parks and John Goodman's terrific performances. This was a breath of fresh air for Smith. Critics were impressed that he seemed to pull this out of nowhere, and even some of the critics that didn't enjoy it overall were still giving him kudos for trying something new and invigorating. It was official. Kevin Smith could make a horror film. And his next film? Another horror film, this time in the way of body horror. Tusk was a giant inside joke from his podcast turned into a real movie. So there are some tongue-in-cheek elements with the film, but overall it did freak people out and was bizarre enough of a film to create buzz and an eventual cult status. This is another one I hear people talk about having seen, despite not knowing who Kevin Smith is, because it's a popular trend to show your friends bizarro, weird horror films at hangouts and sleepovers, and this one definitely fit the bill. I enjoyed this when it came out, and it was shocking to see a Kevin Smith film with an auteur cinematographer on board. It's kind of spotty, and especially with some of the pacing, but overall, this solidified Kevin as a capable horror director. But then he tried to View Askew Tusk and make it into an interconnected sort of horror series by using the 2 convenience store clerks from Tusk and giving them their own film with yoga hosers. And then the third film would be a remake of Jaws, but with a moose, and calling it Moose Jaws. This is where things fell apart. He should have just kept making weirdo one-off horror films, but instead he makes Yoga Hosers, a PG-13 horror film starring his daughter and Lily Rose Depp, which I assume was the driving force to make the film in the first place. And I'm not here to make commentary on Nepo baby filmmaking. I'd probably want to mess around with some silly movie idea with my daughter if I had one. The problem is, Smith wanted us to pay $11 to see it. Yoga Hosers was notoriously lambasted when it came out, and it was such an unfocused, stupid mess of a movie, with crappy effects and mediocre writing. Even though it's bad, it's almost hard to get mad at it when it was clear how much fun he had making it with his daughter. Okay, that was a fluke, but maybe Moose Jaws will be better. Well, Moose Jaws never happened. I think Yoga Hoser's performance derailed that, and I don't think Smith was going to be able to wrangle Johnny Depp back in for a silly movie where Jay and Silent Bob fight a moose to the death. Homeboy was busy making a 5th goddamn Pirates of the Caribbean movie. At this point, Smith was all over the place with ideas. He wanted to do Moose Jaws, but he also wanted to focus on a Mallrats sequel since his Clerks 3 script from 2012 never got picked up. He wanted to do a Krampus movie called Anti-Claus, but bailed on it when he learned that a Krampus movie was already being made. He was announcing a ton of different ideas for movies around this time, and it just wasn't clear which ones he was actually serious about. At one point, he even said he was going to make a kaiju rapture movie with like a 200-foot Jesus or something. I'm not kidding, look it up. People were starting to joke he'd fried his brain from smoking too much weed. So while in the middle of figuring out production for different potential projects, Smith decided to take some of the ideas and concepts from his Krampus movie and morph them into something for an anthology film called Killroy Was Here. He got the inspiration to do an anthology movie after his own segment in the horror film Holidays from the year before. So he started shooting this in 2017, primarily using college students from Ringling College of Art and Design, and shooting off and on during semester breaks while he continued pre-production for Mallrats 2 and Clerks 3. Well, he couldn't get those off the ground, so he made a Jay and Silent Bob sequel in the meantime, and when that had successful Blu-ray and video-on-demand sales, he got the green light for Clerks 3. At this point, Killroy Was Here felt like an afterthought, as it was unsure of what the status was on the film. Would it still be coming out? Is it just on the back burner? Smith said it would be coming out in theaters in 2021, but that never happened. People assumed it would just be dropped straight to streaming, but as it turned out, there were worse plans for Killroy Was Here. In what can only be described as a result of cannabis hypermesis syndrome, Smith announces Killroy Was Here will become the first NFT film and released, according to the website, to 5,555 customers and will be minted as a truly decentralized NFT on Secret Network, only accessible by one of 1,000 generative comic art profile pictures. For those of you watching this from the not so distant future, NFTs are non-fungible tokens, a grifter invention by lame tech bros intended to rip people off and make them pay actual real-life money for a picture of a monkey smoking a blunt, and making them feel special for owning what they think is the only picture of that monkey in existence. This is like that, but in movie form, which is truly pathetic. For Kevin Smith to buy into this annoying trend was sad to see, but I figured, hey, he had no way to make money off of this film. If this stunt helps him make a dime here and there, I don't see too much of a harm, right? Because to me, it just seems like selling a digital copy of your film, but then just arbitrarily cutting off how many copies can be sold at 5,000. Stupid, but I understand that being better than it just sitting on a hard drive. This is what I rationalized at the time, of course.
I was like, this is not a scam. Our movie is the NFT. That's simple. Like, if you want the movie, it's an NFT.
By the time this stunt happened though, NFTs were already on the way out and had been a consistent laughingstock of the internet for a while now. And by 2023, Bored Apes were worth like 10 cents, and people were furious that the thousands they had spent on their special pictures were all down the drain. Who could have possibly foreseen this happening?
Fuck.
I'm surprised this movie took as long as it did to leak, but I kinda like to think maybe the owner of this specific copy was holding out hope that it would somehow be beneficial to hang on to. Cause I assume that most folks that bought it in the first place probably forgot about the movie's existence not even a week later. Out of morbid curiosity, I decided to check out Killroy Was Here, hoping that it would be more like Red State and less like Yoga Hosers. But considering the way it was released, I knew that hope was a fool's errand. The film starts with Smith's daughter, Harley Quinn, babysitting a kid and telling her stories about Kilroy, which serves as the framing device for the anthology of the stories. She tells her boyfriend in the first scene that if he cheats on her, she'll kill him, and she says to come back when the porch light is off so they can hook up. She then tells the kid that the boy that went missing in their town was because of this guy named Kilroy, who has a special psychic connection to little kids, and to not say his name out loud because that will make the connection stronger. She explains the Kilroy inside joke from World War II, and then goes on to explain Kilroy's backstory, saying he was disturbed as a child because he was forced to kill chickens on the farm. And then he went to Vietnam and for some reason went crazy killing everyone over there, and even eating an entire soldier. I guess because he saw them as chickens. I don't really know. None of this even has anything to do with the legend from World War II. Anyway, they locked him up and there was this fire that breaks out and he wasn't rescued but was burned alive. And apparently he was so evil that his humanity was burned away, inexplicably making him look like this creature that you see here. Which I guess looks vaguely like the cartoon from the 40s. I don't know. After this, she says he comes back to the town in which they lived and killed his first post-war victim, which is the leeway to the first anthology story. The first one is about this mom who's been slowly drugging her child over the last 6 years so she could use her to raise money via fundraisers and donations. Immediately we're met with not so subtle dialogue and exposition, clearly showing this mother is bad and manipulative in a way that just isn't very interesting.
It's at the Church of the Incarnate Word?
Yes, at the church, so many good people have donated their money and their time, but if just some of your viewers could afford to give, well, we just might finally have us a sunny day around here.
She says they're going to another fundraiser tonight at the church, and the girl doesn't feel like going. The mom says she has to go, basically, despite her not feeling up to it, and does this whole pity party routine and obvious manipulation, and then says she will fix her up some tea that she needs to drink in order to feel better. The girl wakes up a little later to the tea left at her couch side, with a note that reads, "Drink your nasturtium tea," which prompts the girl to Google the plant that her mom conveniently just wrote down for her, making her realize that it doesn't really match up with the color of the tea and that she's been slowly poisoned by this flower, which she just now looked up 6 years in. Why would her mom leave this note with a specific name if she wanted it to be a secret? Why not find a leaf that's closer in color to the one poisoning her? I don't know. It makes no sense. Anyway, they go to the fundraiser at the church and the mom makes her speech, and then the daughter interrupts and explains how weird her father's death was and that it's wild that she would have the same physical problems as him, and she starts naming Kilroy out of nowhere. There is no setup for this.
And as soon as I figured it all out, it nearly killed me.
It nearly killed me deader than Kilroy.
She says the internet taught her how much of a plant it takes to kill someone, and then she also learned on the internet that the area they live in has its own boogeyman, and goes on to say that she's given her life to him. Like I said, this comes out of nowhere. She calls upon him and drinks wolfsbane and dies, leaving Kilroy to attack all the churchgoers. This feels out of place, like there was no setup for him to appear. You can't just count on the backstory of a framing device to be all that you need. It feels just so half-baked and isn't given the time needed to really develop the story or its ideas. The girl just wants revenge on her mom, okay? That could have been done in any horror or slasher fashion. Kilroy doesn't feel necessary here. Maybe if this was a vehicle to have some fun, cheesy slasher sequences, it would be different, but he just shows up and there's like 2 shots of him killing some people, and then that's it. What was the point here?
Gonna feel yum yum in your tum-tum.
Story 2 is about a woman who is doing a school play and is working with her 2 main leads on a scene, but there's no children or faculty around. I guess they didn't want to go to the trouble to get a bunch of extras. It just comes off as strange and cheap that they're the only 3 people in the auditorium. The 2 kids are arguing with one another, the boys claiming the girl was trying to call upon Kilroy. I guess this is similar to when kids try to scare each other with Bloody Mary, which they could have easily gone with, but I digress. They throw in Jason Mewes to explain that the parents in this town use Kilroy as a scare tactic for kids, so they don't actually have to discipline them. Okay, at least there's a precedent here this time. But the dialogue is even worse in this one than the last. There's lots of lame, hacky lines about Republicans and sexism and stuff. Here, just listen for yourself.
Hey, I didn't scream, only girls scream. Boys yell.
That is sexist, Montana, and not what I asked you.
My dad says no one cares what your dad thinks because he's a Republican.
This is Florida, so everybody's Republican.
I'm not.
Neither am I, and I don't believe in Kilroy either.
The kids disappear, so she goes to look for them in the dark with her cell phone light on. Even though she's a teacher, she could just turn on the lights in the classroom. And I get that it's like a dramatic, spooky lighting for the horror film, but it just comes off as dumb. She somehow immediately starts to believe this Kilroy stuff simply because there's like a bunch of students that have drawn bloody pictures of him, and she like quickly spirals, which comes off forced. It turns out to be a prank, and the kids were hiding in a classroom, and the janitor was in on it too. He then drops more lore saying that the school would lose a kid every semester when Kilroy would come out of the swamp for a feeding.
But these kids, they were the first to come up with the idea to make a deal with Kilroy. A bargain. Blood for blood.
So he hates kids in this one, but helps kids in the last one. So which is it? He says the kids would exchange the adults for their sacrifice if they can get the adult to say Kilroy 3 times. Of course, this is just what happened, and she's immediately sacrificed. There's no time to build much suspense when you explain the lore to someone and it immediately happens to them in the same scene. Now it's starting to feel like Kilroy is just a creature Smith can plug into any scenario. Maybe that's what he intended it to be, but it just comes off as lazy screenwriting. Because what's the point of all the backstory if he can just fit into each scenario? He was a Vietnam veteran. Maybe he should like haunt soldiers who are struggling with PTSD or have guilt for things they did in the war. That could be an interesting concept. There's no reason why this guy would be after kids. There needs to be clear rules set down when building a world for a horror movie. I know Smith isn't known for his dazzling visuals, but whenever it cuts back to Harley Quinn's plot, I'm like, who is shooting this film for him? Why is it so aggressively bland looking? Like more than usual. Scenes at the beginning look like an allergy commercial. It's especially wild when if you put the movie in chronological order, you go from Tusk to this. It's like, wow. Even the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, which was shot after this, had competent enough blocking and camera work, you know. This just comes off as bare bones as possible. The third story I initially liked the concept of because having Ralph Garman play a pedophile priest is a good idea. But unfortunately, it's another quarter-baked idea that goes nowhere. This character would work better in like a goofy Jay and Silent Bob setting, I think. Like, I don't know. And the whole time you can tell Kevin doesn't know how serious he's trying to play it. Because Garman's character has some dark jokes and like he smokes a joint while driving and shit. But it keeps it too serious overall and it's too wishy-washy in tone.
Muy bien, muchachos!
The idea of there being a secret ring of pedophile priests that take migrant children whose parents are in legal limbo out camping is a decent concept. But it just ends up with them in a motel instead, and that's where he's going to try to molest them. Everything about it feels cut short. Before they even get to the motel, a guy at the gas station tells Garman's character he knows what he does, because when he came to the United States, he had a priest take him camping too. So to me, this sounds like it could be used for world building, to insinuate this could be like a conspiracy to be unraveled or something, but there's not. He's just there to tell the kids to say Kilroy 3 times so they can get away from the priest. In my mind, they could have expanded it in a way where they take these children to like a full-on weirdo camp or something and like the kids have to escape and they discover other children being held hostage and we get into like the network of priests and like how that works and stuff. That could be like a way to make it more interesting, but instead it's pretty straightforward. He just meets up at the motel with other priests and they smoke weed and drink before they want to do the deed with the kids. And of course the kids call Kilroy to kill the guy before he can molest them. So there's no suspense at all because it's so bare bones and simple, you know exactly what's going to happen. It's another waste of time. The fourth and final story is even worse. It's about a redneck Christian who goes on live streams to lure in gay guys for sex and then shames them live on camera. It's the most generic, boring commentary on Republican homophobia, and it reeks of Trump-era art. And watching this at the end of the Biden administration is kind of funny. In the right hands, this would be an interesting idea to do for like a found footage film. And it could work, it's just too heavy-handed. Chris Jericho plays this redneck, and he just talks for a long time to his followers, I guess to fill in the gap of the short film because there's just so little there. It turns out one of these gay guys he shamed killed himself afterwards, and the guy shows no remorse, of course.
Your boss is gonna see this, you deplorable piece of gator shit! Your life is ruined! Your life is over!
And before you know it, the wife of the man that killed himself ties up this redneck guy and feeds him to a gator for what he did, okay? But it all just happens so quickly, there's no build-up whatsoever, once again. Like, it all happens what feels like in one scene. The CGI gator looks like shit, by the way, and, I know it's low budget, but still, like, what are you gonna do? I don't know. So she kills him for revenge, but then, inexplicably, Kilroy shows up, ties her up, and does the exact same thing to her. Why does this happen? I don't know. The answer, like I said earlier, is they had to shoehorn him into whatever way they could. This feels so lazily slopped together that I want to know if Kevin had different unit directors work on each story and he just slapped his name on it at the end or something. And I know, unfortunately, that's probably not true. I just don't want to believe that he stooped this low to make something this uninspired and shitty. This feels like a bunch of proof of concept slapped into a movie. And that's the strangest part, is that he originally announced this for a 2021 release date. But how? This movie, with credits, is only an hour and 2 minutes long. There's no way that he could have thought it could be theatrical. And the whole time I was watching it, I was thinking about the actors that were involved, who probably thought they were going to be in a theatrical film, or at least a straight-to-digital film, but to find out that instead it was going to be minted as the first NFT movie was probably devastating. Especially imagining that you're a big Kevin Smith fan and you've seen Dogma or Chasing Amy or something, and you think maybe it'll be a cult movie, but no, it's one of 5,000. So anyways, after that final story, we cut back to Harley Quinn, and it turns out she wanted to kill her boyfriend for cheating after watching his location the whole time because he doesn't really know how to turn off the location on his phone or leave his phone somewhere else, I guess. I don't know. But she hypes up the little girl to kill Kilroy, and then the girl runs out and stabs him and is shocked when it's the boyfriend, despite him not looking anything like a deformed maniac. Harley Quinn is pleased. And then, for some reason, I guess to teach her a lesson, Kilroy shows up and kills Harley Quinn. And then the little kid, who was just a second ago scared enough to stab an innocent man, just walks with Kilroy into the forest. None of this makes any sense whatsoever. Now, I haven't seen Jersey Girl, nor have I seen Cop Out, but it's very unlikely those movies are worse than this one. This movie is worse than Yoga Hosers. This is one of the most embarrassing things I've seen in a long time, especially from a director who at one point did actually give a shit. And I don't want to tell you to go watch it, but maybe you should at least share the digital copy if you happen to have one, because turning a film into a non-fungible token is as low as it gets. And as a filmmaker myself, I cannot just let this stand by. I think up to the halfway point of the film, I was thinking, yeah, this is pretty mediocre. But by the end, I found myself physically enraged with how lazy it was. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'm going to go cleanse my palate now by watching a fresh new horror movie that just came out, Late Night with the Devil. Surely there were no corners cut with this movie.